Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Finster. Yes, Finster is taking a siesta. How you doing? Which is sort of what she does best. Anyway, we are here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to Symphony number 84 in E-flat major. Don't you just love E-flat major? It's the heroic key of like the Eroica Symphony and Ein Heldenleben and stuff like that. Here it's not so heroic, which is fine. It's exciting. It's really exciting. One of the things about these Paris symphonies, the symphonies that Haydn wrote for the concerts in the French capital, conducted by the Chevalier de Saint-Georges and patronized by Marie Antoinette herself, the let-'em-eat-cake lady. Well, the thing that's so cool about these symphonies is just their unbelievable amount of energy. There was nothing like this in all of Western music, really, until Haydn wrote these pieces. I mean, they have such drive and such gusto. And this symphony is an absolute textbook case of that. I mean, it's so powerful and vibrant and exciting. And you'll hear it immediately when the Allegro takes off. But before the Allegro takes off, this is one of the three Paris symphonies. I think that's three Paris symphonies that have slow introductions. Later, Haydn was to make this almost his invariable principle. But these slow introductions are of many kinds in Haydn's symphonies. Some of them are very closely thematically related to the music that follows. Some of them have no relationship whatsoever to the music that follows. Some of them are partially related to the music that follows. Well, this one has what you might call a partial relationship, which you may or may not hear. It's marked very slow, and I'll just tell you right away, the opening few notes after there's a loud chord, then a bunch of soft violin things, then another loud chord, then some soft violin things, then another loud chord. Well, those soft violin things, 4 or 5 notes, are very close to the opening of the second movement. And you can check back and forth yourself and see if you hear something. I never did, to be honest with you, until I started thinking about these things. I never noticed it, but you may, or you may not. It doesn't really matter. Or we may only notice it subconsciously. And then later on in this introduction, as it comes to an end, there are a couple forceful pronouncements in 4 notes. Ba, bum, 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 like that. Well, that does return at the end of the first subject, or in the course of the first subject. That follows right afterwards. Dum bum ba dum bum bum ba dum bum 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 bum. Does that, and you may recall that from the introduction. That I did notice, sort of right away. But that's all. Otherwise, we can't make a fetish of these things. When Haydn wants you to hear something that's really closely thematically related, we do. And when he's just sort of doing it to, figure it's nice to do it that way, and if they hear it, fine, and if they don't hear it, that's good too, then that's good too. This is one of those cases. So let's listen to the introduction with the Austro-Hungarian Haydn Orchestra, conducted by Adam Fischer on Nimbus. noble, solemn, beautiful introduction. It really is. It's just majestic. I think that's the thing. It has majesty because Majesty was hanging out at the concert. Sometimes. Well, not always, but sometimes. Royalty, aristocracy, the burgeoning middle class. Everybody showed up at these things. So that's the introduction. Now we get to the allegro. This allegro is just one of the most exciting things you've ever heard in your life. And it presents the motto of the whole symphony. This is a monothematic sonata form movement. In other words, everything is based on the first subject, which is full of motives and material, and it's also a monomotivic symphony. It's almost a squiggle symphony, but not quite. The motive is bum ba da da dum. That's it. Dum ba da dum, bum ba da da dum, bum ba da da dum, da 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 dum. You're gonna hear ya da 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 dum. Yeah, oh, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere, and it never sounds the same way twice. What fascinates me about this movement, particularly this monothematic sonata movement, is that it sounds so rich, so diverse in its material, but it's constructed out of such simple things. The other thing that it's constructed out of, that you'll also hear in a couple other places in the symphony, are musical ideas based on two repeated note sniglets. Dun 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 dun, dun dun ba da dum bum bum ba da dum bum 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 bum. Da 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 dum bum 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 ba da da dum bum ba da da dum. That bum 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 bum, that sort of thing, going up and down the scale. Dun 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 dun. You're going to hear that all over the place, in every possible way and direction and harmonization. It never sounds old or tired. It just sounds unified. That's the whole thing. So remember those. Remember bum ba da 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 dum, bum ba da 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 dum. It's dun da 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 dum. That's the motive. And then the two-note sniglet things, and you are set. But for one fabulous, fabulous exception, which happens in the second subject. And before I run the whole exposition, I want to play you the second subject. The second subject is announced in the woodwinds. This is a symphony that does wonderful things with woodwinds, and it's another way that Haydn creates unity, because there's an equally fabulous woodwind passage at the end of the second movement, which we're going to hear. But you hear the first theme played by the woodwinds, and then something very strange pops in. A wonderful, dynamic, harmonic exoticism. And we've noticed, most of Haydn's motion music passages, or later on, he will throw in something exotic, something spicy. And that spicy thing is going to prove to be an agent of change in like the development section and even the recapitulation. It never is exactly the same way twice. And you'll notice that this one ends with the two-note sniglets. Dun, 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 dun. You're going to hear lots of that as well. So it's related, but somehow so totally different. Here it is. Let me just play you the second subject. It's just marvelous. It gets stuck in your head. It's so cool. Here it is. Nifty, ain't it? I mean, that's really, where does Haydn get these ideas? There's these harmonically really interesting excursions that he has to jolt back into a more familiar key area to make us feel that all is really well with the world, that chaos has not completely erupted, but it seems like it may. That's what makes it so exciting. So I'm going to play you now the entire exposition. My voice is a little wrecked. It's allergy season. Oh my God. Anyway, let's listen to the whole exposition, and then I'll just turn you loose on the rest of the movement, because it's so much fun to see what Haydn does with these wonderful, wonderful motives, the way he just is constantly varying them. So much so, quite frankly, that you don't really even notice when the recapitulation happens. The only way you really know you're recapitulating is that the second subject in the woodwinds comes in with that wonderful exotic bit, and that says to us, oh. And in that way, paradoxically, although I'm getting ahead of myself, I might as well just make the point. Paradoxically, the thing that proves to be the most sort of balanced, restoring musical equilibrium was the thing that was the most out of joint moment in the exposition. And it has just the opposite function of the recapitulation. And that's what makes Haydn just so freaking fabulous. My God. So here is the exposition. Doesn't that just make you want to hear what's coming next? Well, he doesn't let you down. That's what you have to know. So let us move on to the second movement. A gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous theme in variations. It's another one of Haydn's Siciliano themes. You know, the rhythm, dun, ba, da, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, ba, ba, da, 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 da. And you may, like I said, hear a resemblance to that thing, to the very opening of the symphony, or you may not. The theme is in the usual two parts, A, B, B. They're not exactly the same because A comes to what they call a half cadence, a pause, and B, and the repeat comes to a final cadence, and then the second half starts. And you hear it twice. Here is the theme. Notice how Haydn makes it interesting by adding those accents. It's wonderful. Just one of those little details. It gives you a little poke as it's going. I just love it. The thing to keep in mind about this movement is that the arrangement of variations is very, very unusual. First of all, the opening phrase of A ends with ba-dum-da-da-dum, bum ba-da-da-da-dum, bum ba. It ends with a bum ba-da-da-da-dum. There, I had to get it back in my head. Bum ba-da-da-da-dum. It ends with one of those. But then you've got a vicious, exciting, dark, dramatic, brooding minor key variation that erupts out of nowhere. Usually in theme and variation things, Haydn will include something in a minor key for contrast, but usually later on. Here he does it right up front to give you a real shock, and it does. It really does. Then there's a very elegant return to the major key and the closer melodic form of the melody, but with lots of the motive. Bum ba da 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 dum, bum ba da 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 dum. It does that over, and oh my gosh, it goes motivically crazy. Then there's a grand restatement of the opening theme for full orchestra, and finally, although this orchestra doesn't have like trumpets and timpani, it's flute, 2 oboes, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, and strings. That's basically it. And then the woodwind cadenza. There's a coda. And remember we talked about what's a cadenza? We had a video about that last week or so, where we talked about how so many cadenzas are introduced by what's called a tonic 6/4 chord. And an inverted tonic chord, theory doesn't matter. It's a chord that you can't forget once you've heard it, and you hear it here. And so I'm going to play you the moment leading up to it with the chord that says cadenza. And this, of course, is not improvised because it's for the entire woodwind section. It's magnificent and beautiful and fun to play, and it recalls the second subject in the first movement, not thematically, timbrally, which is something Haydn often does to create a feeling of unity. So here is that through the end of the movement. Absolutely lovely, isn't it? I mean, really, really beautiful. And so then we have the minuet. Now, the minuet is, I don't have to play the whole minuet. The minuet is actually full of these delightful little motivic turn idea things stretched out. And it's actually very interesting because you may not notice it at first. It's augmented, as they say in the business, longer notes. So it doesn't sound bum ba da 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 dum. It doesn't have that turn quality quite as obviously. But you do hear it in the trio. And the trio is a variation of the minuet, actually. A very obvious formal variation of the theme of the minuet. And that does have the turn, particularly at the very end, the motive that we were talking about. And so it sort of turns the symphony on its head. It seems that rather than just taking this motive, bum ba da 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 da, that we've heard a billion times already, Haydn has shown it to evolve naturally out of different material that comes before, so that it seems like something new. It's a new thing, the way the minuet does it. It's wonderful. Haydn's sensitivity to these things. He doesn't want to just say, okay, I'm going to use this motive again. He says, now it's going to arise naturally from material that you've already heard, as though it had never existed. And you hear that in the trio. So I'm just going to play you the trio, and you can hear exactly what I'm talking about. Here it is. So that ends with the motive, but go and compare that to the full minuet on your own. Yes, I'm giving you homework. You have to go and do your own listening. Now, the finale. Oh, this is a wonderful finale. First of all, it's exciting as hell. My goodness, it just flies by. Number one. Number two, it is extraordinarily exciting and based on the motive. I mean, it starts right off with the motive, and it goes nuts. You hear it everywhere, all over the place. It's fabulously monomaniacal. It really is. It's another monothematic movement, actually, and monomotivic because it's monothematic. But again, the way that Haydn creates contrast and color, this constant feeling of freshness using these very simple ideas, is just one of the great miracles of Western civilization. It really is. And I do want to play you one other bit, because the introduction to the second subject of this particular movement is also wonderful. Remember, in the first movement, Haydn did something wonderful in the second subject after you heard the theme, and it was like really went off on a tangent. Well, here he does it before you hear the theme. But the concept is similar, right? The exotic, interesting, weird bit happens in the course of the second subject. And the reason Haydn does this, of course, is because he doesn't want it to be, it's monothematic and monomotivic, but he doesn't want it to be monotonous. He doesn't want monotony. He wants it to be really interesting. And so he includes these digressions and strange moments of repose where you think things are sort of going off the rails. There it was loud in the first moment. Here it's quiet. So I want to play you when it first happens, which is, between the first and second subjects, and then the way Haydn handles it in the development section, where it goes, leading into the recapitulation this time. Oh, it's marvelous. It's marvelous, the depth of mystery that Haydn brings into these harmonies. So I put like a half-second pause, and you can hear exactly what I'm talking about. Here it is. Isn't that just amazing and fascinating? I think it really is incredible. And so let me play you the whole exposition. You got to hear the exposition, and here it is. I hope you got the bum ba-da-da-da-dum, bum ba-da-da-da-dum, bum ba-da-da-da-dum, bum ba-da-da-da. It's craziness. And then there's a coda, and the coda, in this particular case, begins with the motive, repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, like a bicycle that's treading along. And then it goes crazy for the wind-up, which ends with the by now we understand Haydn's personal ending. 3 repeated chords. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah. I mean, no one else did that. No one. Haydn was the guy. And he made that his own. It was his signature, his hallmark. So here is the coda leading to the ending with the motivic thingies and the classic Haydnian ending. Oh, it's just so breathtakingly refreshing, and I feel so good after you listen to the symphony. I mean, it's like, it's like taking a cold, fresh shower or bath, or getting a day massage. You just come away feeling invigorated. It's tremendous. And the next one, number 85, is La Reine, the Queen. And we all know who that was. Yes, it was her symphony, her favorite one, supposedly. I mean, there will be modern revisionist scholarship which will tell us that it was all completely wrong, and he actually wrote it for Genghis Khan. But it's okay. For the moment, it's Marie Antoinette, and we'll talk about that next when we get to number 85. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.